Welcome to another edition of Influence Today. Influence Today is about what influences you. Books, people, the environment, and I think the environment is really powerful. Influence Today with Chet Tart and Terry Lyles. How you doing, Terry? Welcome.
Doing great, Chad. Good to see you again.
Well, things have changed. It looks like you need somebody to help you now with writing books, and you have a
I
guest
do.
named Steve Bowen. And I love the title of the book, and I love the subtitle. So we're going to dive deep into it. And if you could, guys, pick out some nuggets today that really could help our life and also encourage people to buy the book, I appreciate that. The book is called Becoming Invaluable, which I think is a real positive title, and also curious why you named it that. And you have a subtitle, and I love it. It's not in English. Develop the will-atude to navigate. Did I get that right?
Navigate.
Navigate. All right. So it's even deeper.
Yeah.
Let's start a second. Normally you write your books by yourself, Terry. There must have been some reason why you appreciated Steve and collaborated. What happened?
Yeah, it's great to be back. And, Influence Today is such a part of our lives, Chet, because we interview all kinds of people. And I feel like I'm on the receiving end of that now. And it's fun. So I met Steve Bowen 6+ years ago, right at it, and worked with his company as a keynote speaker and then coaching and training executives with him and his organization. Now he's moved on and sold his company, did really well, and is not retired. So as soon as he retired, I'm like, you know what? You want to write a book? Because this is really stupid. I need some help. You could write a book with me and we'll make it fun. So he's written a previous book. This is my fifth. So I've never co-authored with somebody, and he hasn't either. So it was a different experience, but it was a lot of fun. And Steve has a wealth of information and knowledge. And I think combined together, we created this book called Becoming Invaluable.
We all know about Terry, who listens to the podcast. Steve, welcome, and tell us a little about you and your background and why you decided to work with Terry.
Well, first of all, Chet, thank you very much for inviting, I will say, us on and me on, because you do this with Terry, and it's really truly an honor to be able to have done this book with Terry, and I say that because we did so much great work together. And his whole book, you see over his shoulder there, Performance Under Pressure, which we're in the consulting world. Just to give a brief background, I built a business in the supply chain consulting world, and it's a high pressure business all the time because we had very specific financial delivery contracts with our clients. And so the pressure of performing like that, as well as ascertaining the new clients, was just tremendous. So that's where our relationship started. And what we found was a synergy between the two of us that I have to say, at least in my experience, in my own experience, is rare. And we really enjoy working together. But Terry likened doing this book together as like another marriage. And, there was a lot of negotiating, as you were describing at the beginning there. There was a lot of negotiating to get through doing this together. So it's just been a joy. And I really appreciate being able to come on and talk about the content of the book a bit. And so that was my rationale was very simple. He asked, and I love this subject of development from a personal standpoint. And that also applies then, of course, to leadership and teams and organizations.
Steve, that's powerful stuff. You know that Terry's a stress doctor, and you mentioned the word stress when you were working with your company. A couple things. Could I ask you what the product was that was so stressful and how Terry came in to help you?
Okay, so the product that we offered, the service that we offered, was across the supply chain in procurement, logistics, and operations, meaning manufacturing operations. Okay, we delivered improvements in productivity, throughput, change in the management structure, change in the way they went about working within their teams. And we delivered that typically, Chet, in 6 to 9 months, where an organization might contract with us on average about a $3 million investment on their part, that we were required to produce a return on that investment of 4-to-1 to 8-to-1. So a big return. So we're talking about $20 million in benefit to the bottom line of that company. And we guaranteed a 2-to-1 return. So when you put a guarantee out there like that and you stand behind your word, it adds a level of pressure. And so when I looked at that, the way we found Terry for this keynote speech was we were growing, and the pressure that grew with having to continue to grow was weighing on our team. It's a load, right? Because you constantly got to find new clients as well as expand your existing clients. And so when I found Terry's book, Performance Under Pressure, we talked on the phone, I think maybe for 45 minutes or an hour, Terry. And that was all I needed to hear about what he was doing. And when he described what he was doing with race car drivers and fighter pilots, I was like, okay, this might not be quite that intense, but this is a different kind of stress and pressure. And we need to help the people transform that into just pure challenge and competition, which is what Terry taught us to do.
So when he came along, it wasn't just for you, it was for the entire team that you had there to help them through this pressurized deal.
It was very much so.
And then you stayed in touch. How did this nugget come together where you go, we should write a book, which is probably the most stressful thing in the world to begin with. So how did that happen?
It's like having a child, whether you birth it or not, you're still in the birthing room. So it's not easy.
I think we're still
doing it with somebody else is even more stressful.
Yeah, I know. We're still in post-birthing mode right now. It just came out last week. So it's pretty bruising to go through it, but we're happy it's done and we're out.
Go back to how that story started. Yeah, go back and talk about how that story started.
Well, I think what happened was over those years, and we used Terry not just once, but then we had a quarterly program. We brought him back to another company meeting. We then had individual coaching for people and inclusive for myself, right? So, so as that evolved, Terry and I got to know each other really well. And he learned how much I was into this whole self-development arena and all the reading and listening I had done in the past to learn about this subject. And I truly been a student of the subject since I was like 25 years old, when I sort of set my first goals, Chet, for what I wanted to accomplish in life. And from that standpoint, as we talked about it, the synergies in thinking is the best way I can put it, were frankly a bit astounding. It just fit together. It just linked right up like that. And that led to then Terry getting involved with our board of advisors, even through the process of when we sold the company. We were looking for a new CEO. He advised that, helped us to interview the people, everything. So he was really engaged in my whole transformation out of the company and into the so-called retirement life, which, I'll always be active and I'm enjoying it. And when that happened, I think somewhere in there, Terry was contemplating another book and he got the crazy idea. He came to me and said, Steve, would you do this with me? And I said, well, let me, after we talked an hour, I said, let me sleep on it tonight and I'll talk to you tomorrow. I called him back 15 minutes later and I said, I'm in. I'm in. And we started. And we didn't have a title or anything, but we had a construct around invaluable, which I would let Terry describe. So we had a construct around that, but we didn't have the title yet, Becoming Invaluable, even at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the title and how the book is. Invaluable means me, the team. What does invaluable mean in your terms here in the book?
Well, how we started with this was, I have these conversations like all of you do, coaching and challenging people around you and work teams and so forth. And I'm constantly talking about, how do you become irreplaceable? How do you become that person in your organization or your family, your neighborhood, your society, where you're the go-to person? That's what we deemed invaluable. Like, what does that really mean? So I started, I love words, Chet. We talk a lot about etymology and slicing words up. And so I sliced up the word invaluable. In other words, you mean us, you are able to have value. Because some people don't believe they have value. They just think, well, I wasn't raised that way. I don't have the right education. I don't have the right influences in my life that we talk about, Chet, on a regular basis on this show. So the whole concept was everyone has value. It's how do you unearth that inside of an individual performer to bring out the best of who they are in talent, put skill around it to make them awesome. So our book is about identifying what the talent is in individuals that read it, and then putting a skill set around it in 9 chapters and say, here's how you actuate becoming invaluable in your own life.
So are there nuggets you could share with us? Because you must have things popping around in your brain about how we're going to write this book. And
Yes.
Steve must have looked at it differently, which I think is great. And Terry looks at it differently. So tell us about the separate thoughts that became collaborative thoughts.
Okay. So
Start
Terry,
with the words, Steve. Start with the words. I mean, that's really a powerful thing.
Let me start there with so we came up we very quickly, once we came up with becoming invaluable and the whole concept that Terry just described, we ended up coming up very early on with this concept of develop the willitude to navigate success. I'll come back to those two words, willitude and navigate, but we built that around what Terry calls the human capital equation. And the human capital equation is about mental and physical fitness, if you will, strength, then, you know, strength of character, strength in everything that we do, and flexibility. And that forms our own self-worth. And so when we got into that conversation, it became really evident to me that there's another element of fundamentals. And I think this is where the so-called marriage between Terry and I occurred, is I had always used a concept of you have to have a solid set of purpose, values, and vision, as well as a mission. And a mission in our world is what must we do in the next 12 months to take that hill, so to speak. And underneath of that is knowledge, skills, and attitude. So those underpinnings of knowledge, what you need to know to do what you do, skills, what you do with what you know, and attitude, how you feel about what you do, combined with, if you have the right purpose, set of values, and vision, with the human capital equation, puts you in a position that's really unstoppable for people. And to tap into, I don't care what anybody's background is. I don't care what their vocation, what their career, what their choice of path in life is. If they can apply the principles we put together of both understanding some of the knowledge or theory or strategy, along with the practical implications, is what we're trying to bring together. So that led to then this triangle. And then we said, well, where do these words fit? Maybe Terry, you want to comment on this? Where do these words, willitude and navigate, fit in this human capital equation?
Right. Yeah. And Chet, every book I've written, you probably remember this, I make up a word in every book because I'm usually in a space in my life when I write these books from, 15, 18 years ago, that something impacts me, and it's something I end up saying over and over and over again to people I'm coaching or training. So I just create a word. Mine in this one was navigate, and Steve came up with willitude, and it's because it just works. So the cover of the book is here, and there's a reason there's a triangle on it, because this triangle literally implies that on one side is health, strength, and worth. And that's our triangle. But up one side is willitude, and up the other side is navigate. So willitude, like Steve said, is that ability to have the willingness to do whatever it takes and the fortitude to complete it. And navigate is, there's times, Chet, as you know, we're negotiating things and navigating people. Then there's times we're navigating people and we're negotiating things. So it's this back and forth of, when do I negotiate? When do I navigate? Whether it's a person, a situation, or an event. So that's why this human capital, which we call this triangle, this human capital, that's how we start the book. And that's what the whole book is through. It's going through health, strength, and this self-worth piece of how do you get to that invaluable space of having enough self-worth that you are the go-to person in your sphere of influence.
And so Chad, after I read that and understand it, someone's going to read the book and say, okay, this is good. Is there a way that somebody can come alongside me and help me and practice that? Because I have never done that most of my life. You think about it, everything you just said is stuff that I battle for businesses with right now, because they've never been taught this. You're actually writing a book of something that should have been taught a long time ago. And the habit of doing this doesn't exist. And when you come along, well, that's great, I think I'll do it. But you know how habits are. You really need an accountability partner. So tell me about what I would do after I find out about this, and how do I move forward?
Well, Terry, if you don't mind, I'll start.
Yeah,
You
please.
can add in.
Please.
So the sort of enlightening moment of all of this, Chet, was not just in writing the book, but in looking at this from sort of transitions in life. And what happened for me is when I realized how many people, in talking with Terry, how many people wrap their worth around what others think. And this is a major problem for people. Okay. I hate to say it that way, but it is a major problem. So it's a challenge. It's a bit of a competition with yourself that you have to adjust, because it's really about the human capital equation and all that we talk about, the 5 attributes. You have to invest in yourself. And that's what we're really advocating is how do you transform investing into yourself, not worrying about what others think, developing your knowledge, your skills, building on your attitude. And sometimes when you don't build knowledge and skills, you don't realize it sucks away from your own attitude, because you get in a situation where you probably should know, or you probably should have the skill, and then you can't perform. And that drains some of that positive attitude. So you have to build all of those on a constant basis. And what you said, companies and people should have invested in this, and obviously there's lots of other books out there that have been written around these similar subjects. I think the differentiator here is that it takes and explains the underpinnings of our whole concept, and we put the practical knowledge into place. And you talked about accountability. That discipline is critical. So what we did at my company is we came up with this flow of process that's described right in the book, and we implemented it with everybody. And guess what? We held everybody accountable to those sets of goals and the purpose and values and vision. We held everybody accountable to that on a regular basis, literally every day on values and every quarter on results. And that's the difference maker from that accountability standpoint. And you can see it immediately, Chet, who's doing it and who's not. And I have a couple of great stories there, but I'll let you go on.
And that's why when Steve brought me on, Chet, you do a lot of coaching and training. I do. Steve has done it with his own company and with others, but mainly he's focused 18 plus years in his own company to make it successful. And so he would bring me in as an example to help hold those leaders accountable. And Steve, as you know, some of those people were more reluctant than others, but it didn't matter. They had to show up, and we would talk shorter and longer. But it was that, oh my God, I got to talk to Doc again. I mean, like it's another week that's gone by, and some would be like, I can't wait. But it didn't matter. We had a system set up that they know they had to go through that transition to really make the end result of that quarter in. Because if companies don't have that kind of accountability with coaching and training and human development, you know what? Things just go by the wayside. You look up one quarter and you're like, well, we're down. We don't know why. Well, it's because you didn't look at it every day. You looked up and a month went by. You have to stay accountable to the step-by-step process. And we write about that a lot in the book, about how important is it, like to self-worth, what Steve just said. One of the biggest issues in psychology that I see today in our world that's really weird right now because of social media is more people think about what other people think about them by far 10x, 20x than they do about how they think about themselves. Somebody can post out one negative thing and your whole world crash. It's like, you don't even know who this person is. They're in a basement somewhere that doesn't even have a basement. Who cares what they think? You see, but we get train wrecked by that or emotionally hijacked. And it's how do we get past that? So Chet, that's where we try to dive into the book to say health, mental health, physical health, strength, mental health, physical strength, and this willitude and a navigation skill set that takes you through these 9 chapters to get you to become invaluable.
I get that. I want to ask you a question, Steve. I heard you say we held everyone accountable. Is the team holding each other accountable, or is the leader holding each other accountable? That fascinates me with companies. And tell me what your thought is on the word we.
Well, my thought on that is very simply this. Terry talks about the I, the we, and the it. All right. So in this definition, I will say the I is the individual. You have to hold yourself accountable. I'll come back to that. The we is the team, of course. And we had various teams within, whether it was a consulting team for a client, or it was a team for business development, or it was a team for developing our next level of offerings. whatever those teams were. And then you have the it, which is the whole company. And what I realized, and I probably should have realized much earlier on in my life, is the very principles that you apply to the it of having a purpose. Why do we exist? Having values that you're going to live by, and having a vision of where you want to go, be that 5 or 10 years out, stated in today's terms, actually applies right to the individual. And most of the individuals have never taken the time to develop and understand, what is my purpose in life? And if you can connect with that, then that leads right to, how do I want those pillars? What are those values I will live by? I state one very simply: character is my number one. And to me, I define character as do the right thing, even when no one else is looking. And I happen to believe someone's always looking. Okay. Whatever anybody else believes, that's fine with me. That's their prerogative. So that's the way it, and I had 4 other values that I lived by, and they're the same values that actually my company lived by. So when I say we, what happened was everybody had the same understanding of the it, purpose, values, vision, mission. They developed then their own individual set of that. And we defined through a system of self-development what we call the KSA inventory, knowledge, skills, and attitude inventory, for their current job and the next job, so they could hold themselves accountable to, I need to learn this, I need to know more about this, and I need to do this not only for my current job, but the next job. And when you put that together at the I and the it, the team aspect becomes very straightforward, because guess what the teams do? They get together in the room, and the first thing they're asking is, okay, what's our purpose? What's our values? What's our vision? And what's our mission for this team? And that's when you get the we accountability. And I see so many leaders, and I don't know how many consulting gigs we've done over the years, Chet, but a lot. And I've seen a lot of leaders, and I've always found it fascinating that leaders seem to want to only invest so much in the success of their individuals. They want to invest in the success of their company. But what I believe is, when you invest in the individual, and even if that means that individual ends up exiting your organization to go do something great in life, if you do that, if you make that commitment to the individual level and really believe in that, it changes the entire dynamic of the company, and it creates a momentum that is unstoppable. And that's what we were able, fortunately, to achieve from a lot of learning from many different angles and a lot of mistakes, Chet. I made more mistakes than I got things right, but here we are, and here I am still standing.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Steve. What I've noticed by listening to this, I don't know how the book is written, and I like to, in our next couple of podcasts, talk about certain chapters. But I would say that this would be a great book for HR and hiring people, knowing where you're going when you're hiring people, because the mistake starts there and
Yes.
then blows through the company there. So I don't know if that's in the book, or maybe there's a way we can talk about how HR people could use the book, or whoever's the hiring manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a professor actually that is a professor in New York, in Manhattan, and he does business leadership training at a university, and he wants to get all of his students, which in his introductory business class, like 240 students, and use the book as a syllabus. And so there's business acumen all throughout the book about how to hire, how to process, how to even fire if you need to. We don't always like to talk about that, but sometimes it becomes necessary. And how to grow through those growing pains. Like Steve said, we've all, we fail forward. That's one of our programs in the book, is how do you fail forward and still get up and keep going with your values, your purpose, and your mission still intact.
Yeah. And I would just like to add to that, Terry and I have had we didn't think we could do all of this in one book, Chet. So we, the I, the we, and the it, it's kind of like, it kind of defines probably the series of books we want to do. And we have a couple other ideas as well, but we see becoming invaluable as an ongoing learning process at all those levels that we can apply. I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that I think we always tried to do was to hire to our values. And that's a very hard thing for HR and the hiring manager to assess. very difficult, but it's worth doing.
Well, thank you. This has been excellent. It sounds like the book is invaluable. It would be even more invaluable if you had a workbook to go with it. And I bet
We're doing it right now.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
It's phase 2. The book just came out last week. So, and you please, we'd drive everybody to Amazon to get the book. That's where we've had the best success so far. We encourage people to go to Amazon and become invaluable. Get your first book. It's a great time to gift it for the holidays, to get it to a person in college, a child, a grandchild, a spouse, a business person. We have had people.
You're employees, Terry.
Your employees, yeah. And Steve, we've already had hundreds of books ordered in the past week from different individuals just in Steve and I's network. So we're really encouraging people to get a copy of it, gift it to someone, read it, enjoy it. And we really appreciate the opportunity to share our vision about becoming invaluable to everybody as a listener.
Thank you. Would you be open to another podcast at a later date and actually diving deeper into some of the chapters and things you talked about?
You guys have done this a lot together. I'm certainly open to it anytime you're willing to invite us back, Chet.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
And Steve, Chet and I used to do this live until COVID hit, and then we went virtual. So we were doing it at an office in Palm Beach, and then you couldn't be around people anymore because we would hurt each other from disease. So we found another way, like the rest of the world did. So we've been doing this since COVID started like this, and it's worked very well. So they can also find us, if anybody's wondering, becominginvaluable.com. They can see more about who we are. But the book is best available on Amazon.com. So Chet, thank you for being invaluable to me because of our friendship, just like Steve, and what we've been able to network and do to help our communities and people at large is invaluable. I appreciate you.
And how do we get in touch with either one of you? Do you have an email or a website we can go to besides the one you mentioned? Maybe you want to repeat that one again?
Yeah, we have. So the website for the book is the title of the book, becominginvaluable.com. Okay. And then we have multiple ways for people to get in touch with us. And as far as I'm concerned, people can reach me at sbowen, BOWEN, at nwkenterprises.com, which is a little business I have to keep me occupied with all these other activities like with Terry. And I just want to say, Chet, thank you again, because being surrounded by people of that are invaluable is one of the things I love doing the most, and that's obvious with Terry. And it's really a pleasure to meet you, and the invaluableness you bring through doing things like this is just tremendous. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry, and thank you for listening to Influence Today.